Especially when we look into the past 1 week, or at least in the 2 weeks, there has been a constant argument, and what you're going to be dealing with in the session as well, is as to whether the wavering of the vaccine patent seems to be feasible. Because some countries initially were not very keen with that regard, but right now it's a need of the hour, is what one side of the argument is, and also sounds very interesting because considering the situation today, it's a pandemic and people need to get their vaccines coming into the countries, and especially in India as well. What we're facing right now is a vaccine shortage as well. So with how far is vaccine patent wavering off going to be an ideal idea, is what we're going to be dealing of in the session. First, bringing on to the topic. So on last year 2020 October, two countries, that is India and South Africa, had actually tabled a joint proposal before the WTO, that is the World Trade Organization, and they had sought for they had sought with regard to certain obligations regarding COVID-19 products, and they wanted to waiver of certain aspects with regard to the vaccine in particular. So especially if you look at the TRIPS agreement, even the TRIPS agreement, or with aspects regarding patent, copyright. Copyright is under Section 1 of the TRIPS agreement. That's with regard to your computer programs, also today what you hear in the term mRNA technology and all those aspects, or even the patent, the term of protection, because for a patent for a copyright, the term of protection is around 50 years. So how are you going to be dealing with that particular aspect, or even with regard to your industrial design, how new or how innovative your design is, and as we know, for the will of the audience, this is all the aspect of intellectual property, and since patent is basically an inventor's exclusive right over that particular product, that is at least in India, at least for a period of 20 years. So today I would be putting forward to my argumenters as to how are you going to be seeing innovation in the space in the coming few months. So if you're going to be even today with the WHO and other countries trying to waiver off the vaccine patent, how far is it going to help the production, with how the vaccine production, and also how far is it going to be motivating vaccine manufacturers as well?
Joel had asked, it might sound a bit utopian to speak about making such a huge waiving of intellectual property with respect to the production of vaccination. However, I would stick to what United States announced, or how did they announce their support towards this waiving idea, with a statement. So they said, extraordinary circumstances call for extraordinary measures. So in a situation like this, where almost every nation, say developing or underdeveloped developed nations, vaccines have become one of the most important and of the biggest necessity. And in a nation like India, where we have been supporting other nations by exporting our vaccines, ended up ourselves in a shortage of the same. So we clearly understand the fact that how important vaccines are for every one and all nation, equally for every citizens of it. And considering this aspect, I'll stick to that utopian concept of not to hurry up, for grabbing IP over vaccines. It takes time. I would really appreciate to, give some more time in order to interact with the same. As we all know, there has been discussions happening with the World Trade Organization. US predominantly has been taking measures to, via text-based negotiations, to waiver the IP involved. However, in a long-term run, I think we can surely think of having something like that under consideration. But currently, I would stick to the utopian idea of waiving the intellectual property over vaccines. Minhaaj, to you, please.
I think I side with Maria on this because, like she stated, this is an extraordinary time, and countries all over the globe, including India, are facing severe vaccine shortages. And the waiving off of the vaccine would not only increase the production capability, but also enhance the distribution capability of the vaccine. So I feel like in this particular instance, we need to look over public interest over private interest, or the protection of IP rights in this case, because our only safeguard from this virus is the vaccine. And if waiving off the IP rights can in fact boost production and also improve distribution, then I feel like we need to side with that side of the argument. Joel, what do you think about the relevance of IP rights and the protection of IP rights in this particular case? Because I think how we need to look at this is not comparing it to how IP rights are looked at ordinarily. For example, if I'm developing a particular FMCG, which is fast-moving consumer good, and I have a specific manufacturing process or have a specific design patent, I'm not talking about wavering it off in that sense, but talking about wavering it off for the benefit of the public at large.
See, I think it does seem plausible that the waiving off of the IP does, like, at least temporarily for the time being. But then something what the argument might come forward is that how far is it going to be motivating companies or even startups to actually come into the space? So agreed that it's always the big company like the Johnson or the Pfizer which is making the vaccine. So even if you're going to be waiving off the patent for for a temporary period of time, it's not going to hurt their profits as such. But then if you're going to think about the next generation, or at least for the next 10 years, you're going to be seeing newer companies coming forward into the space. And also, I don't know if even if you're going to be wavering it off, you're seeing newer variants of viruses coming as well. So some vaccines may not be effective also with the newer variants. Like right now we are having newer variants. Like we have the Indian variant, we have the South African variant, we have the UK variant also. Like and there may be even more of it, the more mutation and the more variants as well. So how far is it going to actually going to be catering to that particular aspect? Even if we're going to be wavering off at a temporary basis, how far is it going to be accommodating other variants as well? So even that needs to be taken into account. And but then I completely agree, because in a country like India and also in Africa, like India is the manufacturing hub of vaccines in the world. Many of our vaccines are being manufactured by the Poonawallas or like the Serum Institute. And recently what we saw was even the CEO of Serum Institute actually had to literally write to the president for stopping the embargo of raw material, because under Trump and also under Biden, they had invoked the Defense Production Act. So that is basically in case of these kind of calamities and these kind of situations, wherein to serve the national purpose. But like what Maria actually pointed out was actually a point which is pointed out by many opposition leaders as well, and many people in the society, as to why we were exporting vaccines and not considering the current need for it. Today we are having images of people dying in the hospital and huge amount of collateral damage as well to the families. So this could have been prevented if we had taken care of, and if we had been self-sufficient in the first place, and then look forward to that. But also, if you look at it from the other aspect, India's image, at least I think the past few years, it has not really been, like with regard to our international relations, have not really been that really strong. So there can be accusations on CA and all those aspects. So to build the image of India as something which is like a vaccine diplomacy was the key term which was used during this pandemic as such. So I feel the exports were necessary, but then I think we could have been prepared well for the second wave as such, and also the upcoming third wave, if what people are saying as well. Over to you guys.
Yeah, Joel. And like Joel had just stated, India's, vaccine distribution, export, and altogether is all a very different topic. I mean, different as in it seeks for a huge discussion altogether. Because first of all, we should have taken care whether India, being the second largest populated country in the world, had enough and more vaccines for its own citizens. We did not take care of it because we were, I appreciate it as well, but in a situation where we face shortage, definitely questions will be, fingers will be pointed against the government. I mean, I can keep all these things, we speak to the IP aspect of it. So one important thing that we should, understand from with respect to the production, like the developments made by Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, Novavax, Johnson & Johnson, just like Joel had pointed out. So when they come up with large scale of production, the absolute benefits hidden behind the waiving of IP will fall with the middle income countries, or like I had pointed out earlier also, the developing countries or the underdeveloped countries. Because according to them, to bear the extensive royalty that might be imposed upon them, like I do not know, fingers crossed upon the decision of the WTO, will be pretty high than what they actually think. Because half of them like even I'll take up the case of the state I am right now in. We all have been put in a lockdown for almost 8 to 10 days. We are asked to stay at our home. For many nations, they have it like forever because they have to stay at their homes without jobs and anything at all. So the aggregate income of most of these nations are like pretty low from what it had been, pushing them into an altogether miserable state. So an addition of a royalty or an introduction of IP into this whole business is going to be a very tiring task, and they'll end up becoming debtors. Into some next level situation. But we cannot simply deny the fact of implausibility and non-feasibility of not giving IP into these parts as well, where these high-income nations who actually come up developing these vaccines originally definitely have their rights over intellectual property, which I do not deny. All that I have been trying to say from the beginning, I think even what Minhaaj had also been trying to add on to, was a time period, a delay in the whole procedure, so that nations can come up with a better situation. What they are in currently, or what they have been put into currently, like the saddest news I just saw in the morning, yesterday was we could see dead bodies that are floating via rivers and coming out of the banks of Ganga, and I mean all those situations like the worst cases in the whole world. So considering all these things, I think nations should be given a breathing time to come forward, is that let the vaccine distribution be properly, it has to be flexible and possibly in almost every nations out there. And then I think it won't be a problem to come up with IP resolutions by the WTO. All we are asking for is a little bit of time so that they'll get time to cope up with the entire situation. What do you think, Minhaaj, upon the same?
I completely agree, because right now we're facing the force of the virus, we're facing the brunt of the virus, and we are in a period where vaccine shortages are the only reason why people are not getting immunized against the COVID virus. And I feel like suspending these IP rights for a brief period of time, maybe temporarily, until we don't feel the force of COVID anymore, so that countries can be encouraged to produce these vaccines using this technology locally. It would also benefit the public at large and the global population. And I'm sure these private institutions would look into the matter and think of it as some kind of philanthropy, if I can term it that way, and wavering off their own IP rights at the benefit of the global population.
Yeah, that's completely agree. And I think if that brings us to the close of the session, or if we want to discuss, like, because if one might justify with regard to the export to even countries like Bangladesh or Pakistan, is because we are sharing the borders with them, and also there can be a chance of even the spreading of the virus or through our neighboring countries as well. So at least if we keep our neighborhood, strong, sufficient enough, is what might be the argument. But then today's several images coming out of the hospital, like at least for the past 4 weeks, is not something which is actually what we shouldn't have been going into in the first place. So I think towards the end, that there needs to be like equitable sharing of the vaccine. And despite the recent statement by Bill Gates of the vaccine sharing, basically, especially with regard to why share the vaccines technology, it's a bit too rich. But also considering that there are countries where there is no stricter IP laws as well. So you do have like third-party companies, or even other companies, or even like even for those generic companies also to make the current products also takes time and takes technology as well. So you might have repercussions with regard to those particular aspects as well. But then considering the current situation, it does seem ideal, is what we feel. And I think that brings us to the close of the session. And
yeah, Joel, like just like a concluding remark, I mean, three of us had consenting views about this matter, but beyond the scope of it, there have been deterrents also, as stated by like the companies including Pfizer or AstraZeneca, who had sent letters to the US President Joe Biden as well. So and the major deterrents that they have come up with regards to eliminating of IP, or with regards to waiving of the same, included the possibilities of counter feature, or the lack of protection in the transfer of goods and transfer of these vaccines. And most importantly, what they had tried to point out was eliminating these protections will not imply that the production of these vaccines would be sped up or it would be fastened at any case. So these were the only possible arguments that companies like Pfizer or AstraZeneca could bring about against waiving the vaccine production. But as far as we three had discussed like all along, what we had been trying to point out, these excuses are like much below the whole scope of saving a life. Because adding on IP just for the sake of, just for the argument stating of protection will definitely slow down the process of production, because that can only increase the trade barriers that are involved and the increasing the cost of production as well, making it almost impossible for middle-income countries to have an access over the same. So I just made this statement all along just to state these are the factors that these companies would like to bring forward towards nations like the United States in order to prevent the whole motion of waiving IP over vaccines. So beyond what India and South Africa had been trying to point out on their side, there are a lot of nations who have come up, including the United States as the latest motive, have come up in support of this motion. So we three, almost unanimously are in support of waiving IP just because of the fact that what we are undergoing right now is an extraordinary situation and what that requires an extraordinary motion. So with which I'll conclude my part of this. Yeah.
I think we have a consensus at item. And to sum up pretty much we've discussed today, we believe that IP rights are important, but at the same time, we believe that in extraordinary situations like this and extraordinary circumstances like this, we need to give a predominance and a priority to the public interest at large. And since we're all unanimously facing this COVID virus and is not one nation or one community in particular, I feel like these large vaccine manufacturers can look into this matter, and like I stated earlier, can look at it as philanthropic work if they may. And if the audience has any views and has any comments or any information about this, please feel free to comment down in the comment section below. And also, what is your take on whether private interest and public interest should be given equal importance, or whether one has a predominance in a particular situation or not? Do let us know. Thank you for tuning into our episode. We are Team Argumentor, and we're always glad to have you around.
Thank you.